And this is Mike?
That is correct.
Okay, this is Mike from, where are you from, Mike?
New Jersey, South Jersey,
Where in South Jersey?
across the bridge from Philly.
No, but I mean, what town in South Jersey?
Oh, Westmont.
Oh, okay. It's Mike from Westmont. He works at the library at Rutgers Camden,
That is correct.
and he's serving as a librarian here at Occupy Philadelphia. How long you been here?
At Occupy Philadelphia since the inception, but I do go home every now and then to take care of family and work and those kind of needs.
Okay, so you've been camping out here?
Yeah, sometimes maybe like 2/3, half of the week, something like that. Yeah.
Okay, and what brought you down here?
Well, I was involved in Occupy Wall Street. I saw on the news the pepper sprays that happened at Occupy Wall Street, and I felt that they were calling attention to some very important issues. And after seeing them being met with such resistance, I thought that it was my civic duty to go and stand with them because I really identified with the broad scale of issues that they were tackling. And so I went up there, I participated in that protest where 700 got arrested on the Brooklyn Bridge.
Oh, you were on the bridge,
And I was on the bridge. I wasn't arrested, though. I was just there.
Now, did the police trick people into walking down on the road, or did people were just walking on the road as a protest? Or it's hard to say.
Honestly, on the ground, it looked like I just walked up the road by accident at first. Like, no one told me not to, but then a protester next to me said, you know, if you walk down the road, you might get arrested. And then I walked back to the path, and then police started to try to get people back on the path, but it also looked like police were leading people at first over the bridge. And they were effectively trapped after that. Like, they weren't allowed off of the bridge. They were trapped, cuddled in.
They closed the Brooklyn Bridge?
They closed the Brooklyn Bridge for hours just to make sure that they arrested every one of those people. Had they allowed the march to continue, the bridge probably would have reopened in like 30 minutes.
Uh-huh. Very sad, very sad. So what issue do you think what's your most important issue? If you could change one thing, or if you were in charge of setting priorities here, because I know no one's in charge here, but if suddenly a group got an inspiration and made you in charge, what's your number one issue? What's the one thing you'd focus on?
Well, I mean, I think changing the way a society works takes a really long time, but I would say that a society that has economic inequality like ours can't really support a real democracy, because if money equals power and 1% of the population has so much money, we're not really going to be able to have a lot of power or say. I mean, if you have to struggle every day just to have enough resources to survive, you're not really going to have time to participate directly in a democratic process. Plus, all of our representatives either come from a very wealthy class of people or are bought by a very wealthy class of people. And it's a shame. I'd rather have a more directly democratic process going on.
Okay, so more of a direct democracy. And campaign finance reform?
As to that, I mean, I'm not. Yes, I mean, definitely. I would support any sort of legislation that prevented economic interests from giving money to politicians, but I am here mainly because I'm not a politician, I'm not a political scientist. I was a history major, I'm more of a philosopher. I'm more here for the cultural change end of it.
Okay. All right, now I saw something in the paper today. Want to hold that for me for a second?
For sure.
Just want to get your reaction to this. This is on the editorial page of the Philadelphia Inquirer. That's just a little editorial by a guy named Silvio Lassetti, who is a retired professor of history and social science, Stevens Institute, New Jersey. And he says he finds in the occupation an echo of the Reformation. The end of the first sentence says, let's say, the movement the gathering is amorphous in its aims because it is not a movement so much as a vigil. And he likens it to the upsurge of protest against the Catholic Church and selling indulgences and kind of a new spirit or zeitgeist, like the Germans would call it. How do you think of that?
I think that's an interesting comparison. I mean, in a lot of ways, this is a cultural movement, as I said before, just like the Reformation was. And in a lot of ways, the Catholic Church back in the day was the 1%. And they had, I guess you could say that in this day and age, capital is God. I mean, and I guess a lot of people here want a reformation of capitalism. They want to make it more fair across the board. They want less of a wealth gap, like more what we were looking at in the 1950s, for example. But I think it goes broader than that. I think a lot of people here also want some fundamental changes in the way the political system is structured and the economy is structured to make the process fairer and adding more checks and balances, adding more voluntary actions among people in the system. And I think a lot of people here are hoping for change that's a little bit more radical, but honestly, I'd be happy with just any kind of meaningful change.
Just a little more fairness.
A little more fairness, a little bit more equality, but I mean, ideally, I would hope for a lot more equality. I would hope for a society based off of a very different premise.
Okay, which is kind of what he's saying in this article. So you should take a look at it. In fact, I'll even leave it with you.
Okay.
It's just a short piece, but he talks about essentially a broader protest against capitalism in general, and he talks about a different way of viewing human nature or human beings, and that he says we've sort of commodified human beings. We judge them based on on the money they have or the possessions they have. And he says that we've created this economic man, and he thinks we need a reformation of that, so we're more than just the sum of our bank account or whatever our job is or whatever.
I would very much agree with that. I don't really like the term consumer. I'm a lot more than a consumer. I'm also a creator. I'm also a liver and a breather. I think the main problem with current capitalism is that it views everything on a competitive basis and everything on a how much could I get from this interaction kind of basis. How much could I get out of the environment? Like capitalism looks at a tree and says, how much money is that? Not, that's a beautiful tree. And I think it is time for a cultural shift where we're not looking at people like that and we're looking at the humanity in people and where we start to have a more cooperative attitude towards how we're running things. I mean, on a voluntary basis, but I would really like to see a society that has more mutual cooperation, just more trust and love in general. I mean, instead of what we have now.
Okay, so you would describe yourself as more of a communitarian than an individualist?
I would say that I'm for collective organization on a voluntary basis. I wouldn't, I agree with libertarians that we are individuals and that we shouldn't be forced, that the state shouldn't force us to do anything as a gunpoint. But I also agree with socialists that we should collectively organize for our economic benefit and, for our social benefit. And I do agree with the principles of direct democracy, too. I think that it's important for everyone to have an equal say.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Mike. Good talking to you, and good luck to you.
No problem. I hope I was a good interviewee.